She just wanted a new look. But within 30 minutes, her life was gone. Julie McCabe was an ordinarily 38-year-old woman, a mother, a wife, a fashion and beauty lover. She lived in a quiet town in northern England and, like so many other women, enjoyed touching up her hair from time to time. In the fall of 2011, she decided to try a new dye from a well-known brand. One of those you can find in any supermarket. Just another color. Just another Saturday afternoon. But something went wrong. Terribly wrong. Minutes after applying the dye, Julie began to feel a mild itch on her scalp, then a burning sensation, then shortness of breath, and then she collapsed. She would never wake up again. She was rushed to the hospital. Doctors fought for her life for days, but her brain was already damaged. A legal, everyday product widely sold and used had sent her into a deep coma. The cause? A toxic chemical found in many hair dyes still in circulation to this day. If you use hair dye or know someone who does, this story needs to be heard. If you're drawn to stories like this, subscribe to the channel now. But get ready, what you're about to hear challenges modern medicine and the safety of your bathroom shelf. Julie McCabe had always been a woman who cared about her appearance. Not in an exaggerated way, she simply liked to feel good about herself. She worked as an administrative assistant, was married to Kevin, and was the mother of a 6-year-old boy. Her life was simple in Keighley, a quiet town in West Yorkshire, United Kingdom. On that October Saturday in 2011, her plan was a familiar ritual. Apply a dark brown dye to cover the gray strands that had begun to appear. Nothing unusual, she had done it before. But this time, she chose a new shade from L'Oreal, a very popular line sold in pharmacies and supermarkets across the country. She had bought the box a few days earlier, read the instructions, and, as always, did the skin allergy test by applying a small amount behind her ear. No reaction. Everything seemed safe. What Julie didn't know, and what almost no one knows, is that the allergy test doesn't always prevent delayed and severe reactions. Sometimes it's just not enough. The real danger was still hidden, buried in the formula's composition printed in fine print most people never read. She went to the bathroom, put on the gloves, mixed the 2 bottles, and carefully applied the dark cream to her hair. While the product set, she looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. She was excited about the result. She wanted to surprise her husband that night. But there wouldn't be time. 15 minutes after applying the dye, Julie felt an unusual tingling, then intense itching. Within minutes, her skin began to swell, first her scalp, then her face. In a panic, she ran to her husband. Kevin tried to help, but within seconds she collapsed. She passed out right there in front of him. Ambulance, sirens, emergency response. At the hospital, doctors did everything they could to stabilize her breathing. The swelling was severe. Her throat was closing. She was intubated urgently, but the worst was still to come. Julie had suffered a severe anaphylactic reaction, an extreme immune system response to an allergen, something her body perceived as a deadly threat. But in theory, it was just a hair dye approved by regulatory agencies. She is rushed to the ICU and connected to machines. The doctors looked at one another, stunned. How could something so common, so everyday, cause such destruction? Kevin couldn't believe it. He had seen his wife healthy that very morning. Now she lay motionless, unconscious, with tubes covering her body, and no one knew if she would ever wake up again. The news spread quickly. The community was in shock. Friends, family, neighbors, everyone wanted to understand what had happened to Julie. But it was a question even the doctors didn't yet know how to answer. Time was running out. With each passing hour, Julie's brain received less oxygen. The damage was building. The family was informed, even if she woke up, the consequences would likely be permanent. The silence, the hum of the machines, the sterile smell of the hospital. It was impossible to reconcile the image of that smiling woman with the one now lying beneath white sheets, unresponsive. And all because of a simple change in appearance. But what exactly had triggered it? What was in that dye that Julie's body simply couldn't handle? The answer would begin to surface days later, and it lived in 3 tiny letters that almost no one knows. PPD.
In the first days after Julie's collapse, the medical team faced a painful mystery. All the initial tests were done: CT scans, blood work, allergy panels, vital signs. None of them provided a clear explanation for the critical condition she was in. The only clue? Kevin's desperate statement. She just dyed her hair, then it started to itch, then she couldn't breathe. That sentence echoed in the doctors' minds. Could it really have all started with an itch? They decided to examine the exact product Julie had used. The box of dye was brought to the hospital. There it was, a long list of ingredients filled with chemical names, some familiar, others nearly unpronounceable. One, however, immediately caught the attention of the specialists: paraphenylenamine, or simply PPD. To most people, that acronym means absolutely nothing, but in medical and toxicological circles, it carries a dangerous history. PPD is a chemical compound that's been used for decades in hair dyes, especially in darker shades like brown and black. It helps lock in the color, making it last longer, but it comes with a hidden cost. It's a highly sensitizing agent. That means it can trigger violent allergic reactions in some people, even those who have used hair dye before with no problem at all. And Julie, without knowing it, was part of that vulnerable group. The signs were there, but they were subtle. Days before applying the dye, she had reported mild irritation behind her ears, nothing alarming. Then, during the application, came the more intense itching, which she assumed was normal, maybe just the chemicals reacting with her skin. The redness was the second warning, the swelling the third. But when the air started to vanish, it was already too late. Julie's body was reacting as if it were under attack from poison. Her immune response was so intense that blood vessels began leaking fluid, tissues became inflamed, and her blood pressure plummeted, a textbook case of anaphylactic shock. At the hospital, doctors administered epinephrine, corticosteroids, antihistamines, everything they had at their disposal. But even so, the internal damage kept accumulating, silently, invisibly. And the brain, that oxygen-hungry organ, was the most affected. In a short time, brain cells began to die, slowly at first, then in a cascade. Kevin held his wife's hand as the monitors beeped sporadically. Julie's eyes were closed, her face swollen beyond recognition. No movement, no response. It was as if she was already gone. Outside, friends and family searched for answers. The media began reporting the case as a possible medical error or a rare allergy. But the truth was far more uncomfortable. There was no mistake, no anomaly. What happened to Julie could, in theory, happen to anyone. Yes, the odds were low, but the risk was real. And yet, PPD remained legal, still present in dozens of products from countless brands. Doctors called in toxicology experts. They wanted to know, why had Julie's reaction been so extreme? Why hadn't the allergy test caught the danger? The answer was as cruel as it was simple. PPD can sensitize the body over time. In other words, you can use the same product for years, and then, one day, your immune system decides it's a threat, and it attacks as if it were a lethal invader. Julie wasn't to blame. She did everything by the book. But her body didn't forgive. She remained in a coma, and hope of recovery faded a little more with each passing day. Still, no one wanted to give up. There were questions left unanswered. The days at the hospital began to blur together. Mornings, afternoons, and nights turned into a repetitive cycle of silence, artificial light, and agonizing waiting. Julie McCabe remained unconscious. She breathed only with the help of machines, and each new brain scan showed what no one wanted to see. Her brain was dying, little by little. It was a dreamless sleep, a deep coma. Doctors called in neurologists, specialists in brain function, to evaluate her condition. Reflex tests, pain stimuli, no meaningful response. The EEG showed minimal electrical activity. It was as if the lights were on, but no one was home. Kevin, her husband, came to the hospital every day. He brought their son to see his mother, even knowing she couldn't see him. He talked to her, held her hands, brushed her now clean but dull hair. "Come home, love, please." There was no sign of improvement. The medical team was honest. They explained to the family that after so many days in a deep coma, the chances of Julie waking up were minimal, and even if she did, the woman they once knew might never return. Memories erased, basic functions lost, total dependence. But Kevin wouldn't give up. He began obsessively researching PPD reactions. He found forums, testimonies from other women who had suffered similar events, some with rashes, others with severe swelling, and, in extreme cases, coma. But no one seemed to speak about it publicly. It was as if the problem was invisible and ignored. Julie wasn't the only one, just the most severe case. The British press began to cover the story. Headlines read, "Woman falls into coma after using hair dye bought at supermarket." The public was shocked. Many didn't even know hair dye could cause allergic reactions, let alone fatal ones. And still, the products remained on store shelves. While the debate outside grew louder, inside the ICU, things became increasingly grim. Julie's brain showed signs of severe hypoxia, prolonged lack of oxygen. The swelling had damaged vital brain structures. Consciousness now seemed out of reach. Doctors explained that legally, Julie was still alive, but neurologically, there were signs of partial brain death. It was only a matter of time before it became irreversible. The family was torn between hope and anticipatory grief. Julie's father, who lived in a nearby town, began sleeping at the hospital. He remembered his daughter as a child, her golden hair in the sunlight, her easy laughter. And now that motionless woman, attached to tubes, barely recognizable. It was unbearable. During one of his late-night visits, he whispered into her ear, "If you're still in there, give us a sign, any sign." But nothing happened. The doctors began discussing withdrawal protocols. It was a conversation no one wants to have. But when the brain stops responding, keeping the body alive artificially becomes a painful, complex, and deeply emotional decision. Kevin refused to accept it. As long as there's a thread of hope, we wait. The days stretched on in tense silence, and during all that time, Julie's body fought against collapse. Secondary infections developed, hospital-acquired pneumonia, renal complications. Her body was exhausted, and so was everyone around her. And beneath it all, one question echoed through the mind of everyone involved. How could this happen to a healthy woman just for dyeing her hair? It was time to dig deeper, to uncover the real danger hiding in the fine print of hair dye labels, and how PPD became a silent yet deadly ingredient. The poison was closer than anyone had imagined.
The tube of hair dye Julie had used looked harmless. Sleek packaging, promises of intense shine and long-lasting color. Like so many others, it sat there among brushes and perfumes in the bathroom at home. But inside it lurked one of the most dangerous allergens still legally allowed in cosmetics, PPD, paraphenylidiene. The name is complicated, but the threat is simple. PPD is an extremely reactive chemical compound. It penetrates the skin, passes through cellular layers, and in some people, triggers a devastating internal alarm. The body goes into full alert and attacks. And the most disturbing part? This isn't a secret. For years, dermatologists, toxicologists, and health organizations have been sounding the alarm about the dangers of PPD. Cases of severe allergies, chemical burns, anaphylactic shock, and even deaths have been documented. The European Union itself recognizes the substance as dangerous, but a full ban has yet to be enacted. The irony is cruel. The same ingredient that ensures rich, lasting color can, in minutes, destroy a human body. Kevin, while his wife remained in a coma, buried himself in research. He discovered that PPD is present in over 60% of hair dye sold worldwide, and that many brands use it in extremely high concentrations, just below the legal limit. He found stories of other victims, women whose faces were deformed by swelling, teenagers with burns on their scalps, a girl in Belgium who temporarily lost her vision, a man in India who died after dyeing his beard. The pattern was the same: dark dye, presence of PPD, violent reaction. And then came the question Kevin couldn't silence. Why is this substance still being used? The answer lay behind the scenes of the cosmetic industry. PPD is cheap, stable, and effective. Replacing it would require investment, reformulation, and ultimately lower profits. Despite the warnings, the victims, and cases like Julie's, economic pressure continues to outweigh safety. Regulatory agencies allow its use, as long as it stays within safe concentrations. But the idea of safety collapses when someone like Julie, who followed every instruction, ends up in a coma. The British Association of Dermatologists had already issued statements of concern. Pediatricians warned about the use of temporary tattoos made with henna laced with PPD, common at parties and on beaches. The substance was everywhere, and most people had no idea. Worse still, the allergy test recommended on dye boxes, the one Julie did, often fails to detect real danger. That's because it only identifies immediate reactions. But the body can take days, weeks, or even years to become sensitized. One day, everything's fine. The next, the immune system explodes. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Julie's condition kept deteriorating. Her brain showed signs of irreversible failure. Her organs began to shut down. The doctors gathered the family. It was time for a decision. Kevin didn't want to hear it. He was still searching for miracles online, still writing letters to manufacturers, still believing he could save her. But the truth was brutal. The poison had already done what it came to do. And it had come from an ordinary bottle bought from an everyday shelf by someone who just wanted to feel beautiful. Julie wasn't the victim of a mistake. She was the victim of a system that normalizes risk and hides danger behind glossy labels. She wasn't the first, and tragically, she wouldn't be the last. Now only one question remained, the one no one wanted to ask. Is it really worth keeping something this dangerous on the market just for beauty?
Julie McCabe passed away in November 2011 after 13 days in a coma. The official cause? Irreversible brain failure caused by an extreme allergic reaction to hair dye. She was 38 years old. She left behind a husband, a young son, and an unanswered question: why? Why did a healthy woman who followed every instruction die? Julie's family demanded an investigation. A formal inquest was launched in the UK. The media pushed for answers. L'Oreal, the manufacturer of the dye, stated that its products comply with European safety standards, and that allergy tests are clearly indicated on the packaging. But to Kevin, none of that made sense. She did the test, she trusted, and she died.
In the months that followed, other cases began to surface. Women reporting severe reactions. Doctors warning about the unchecked use of PPD. Dermatologists describing a rise in sensitizations, especially among young people increasingly exposed to the substance from an early age. And still, nothing changed. PPD continues to be used in cheap dyes and expensive ones, in drugstore kits and high-end salons. It remains legal, still defended by parts of the industry as essential. But for those who have lost someone, it's nothing but a silent threat. Kevin launched a campaign to ban the use of PPD in beauty products. He created a page, sought legal advice, spoke with lawmakers. He wanted to turn his wife's tragedy into a warning, but he ran up against corporate lobbying, economic interests, and collective indifference. In the end, all that remained was the grief and the color. That dark, intense, beautiful color, the one that promised to renew a woman's self-esteem, but in practice, extinguished her life. Today, for Kevin, deep brown will never again be just a color. It's a cruel reminder that sometimes the greatest danger lies where we least expect it, in the things we use every day without question. Julie McCabe didn't want to change the world, she just wanted to change her hair. But her story exposed something many people ignore. The products we use on our bodies often go into our bodies, and sometimes they kill. She followed the rules, read the label, did the allergy test, trusted the brand, trusted the system, and still she paid with her life. How many other people, right now, are mixing colorful bottles in their bathroom, unaware that inside those bottles is a chemical that has already killed? Julie's death wasn't a freak accident. It was a warning that went unheard. A reminder that beauty should never come at the cost of awareness. Today, her husband is still fighting for change, but the product remains on the shelves. The formula is unchanged, and the next victim may have already bought the next box. What if it were you in that hospital bed, or someone you love? If this story moved you, subscribe now. Medicine still holds secrets you need to know, and some of them are closer than you think.